No, I got it. Yeah, no, I'm very excited. I appreciate you reaching out to us and looking forward to kind of talk about no, not a problem. Touch base and our focus is
Somebody might want to do something, but I'm not sure it would be on the but I don't want to
Don't worry. I'll keep it off until it's time.
All right.
Thank you.
Just an observation because I'm thirsty. Somebody just got water.
I don't trust you.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Well, good morning on this wintry wonderland of a spring morning. So we welcome all of you who are joining us in our pews this morning, and to those who are joining us on our online platforms. We especially welcome any guests who are worshiping with us for the first time today. either here with us physically or joining us in the cyber world. If you are in the rack in front of you, you can place that card in the offering plate when it comes around later in the service, and we'll be able to reach out to you and answer any questions you might have about our congregation. If you are watching from an internet platform, you can go to our website, which is uucleveland.org. And time for a little housekeeping. On the back of your order of service, you will notice a QR code. Use your phone, and it will, click on it, and there'll be a form for you to fill out, and we'll take you to our contact tracing form and fill it out. It's very simple and takes only a few minutes. You can also access it via the bit.ly link on your computer when you get home, and that'll just help if we get word that somebody caught COVID, we can contact you since you're here. So we are now about ready. We are about to enter into sacred space. Please take a moment to silence your phones or any other electronics that beep. Now, if you will join me in our chalice lighting, and you will find the words on the yellow cue card in front of you. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I know we are supposed to have our COVID covenant later in the service, but since things are moving and changing at such a rapid pace, I just wanted to make sure you saw the most recent announcement. The fact that so many of you, I now know what the bottom 2/3 of your face looks like. I guess you've seen it. But we are now in a phase where the risk is so low in our county that we are saying masks are optional. You can still wear your mask if you want to. Nobody's going to tell you to take your mask off. But if you would like to remove your mask in our space this morning, you're welcome to do so. Here's my hope. If you are gathering in a small group and someone says, I prefer that we put our masks on to be together, I hope that you will all be generous of spirit and gracious and have a mask with you that you're willing to put on if somebody requests it. But for the time being, until something changes with the pandemic, we're going to be masks optional. And what that means is you might smell coffee toward the end of the service. I know, this is the most exciting thing that's happened all year. There will be coffee at coffee hour today. Okay, so let's very good. Play the postlude. Some words from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. We are destined to share this planet together, and as the world grows smaller, we need each other more than in the past. But whether we are trying to reduce nuclear threat, defend human rights, or preserve the natural environment, it is difficult to achieve a spirit of genuine cooperation as long as people remain indifferent to the feelings and happiness of others. What is required is a kind heart and a sense of community, which I call universal responsibility. So we'll now take a moment to be responsive in how we greet one another, and then we're going to sing Mother Earth, Beloved Garden. The words are in your order of service, but if you prefer to use the teal hymnal, it's number 1067. Let's take a moment to greet one another as we enter into worship. Now is the time in our service where we share our joys and concerns with one another. Natalie, can I ask you to put some water in this bowl for us? And I'll share. It's okay. I do want to let you know about a couple of things that are coming up that are both joys and concerns. One of which is this coming week, we will have a little bit of chaos in this room because our new sound system is going to be installed. That's a great joy, and it's going to hopefully make sound for all of you that are tuning in on Facebook or YouTube even better, and so we're looking forward to that. What that means is we're going to need a few more folks on the tech team because we're going to need 2 volunteers every week to work with the sound and the cameras up there in the balcony. If you're accustomed to sitting in the balcony, you might consider doing something while you're up there. And so there's going to be a training on Wednesday at 6, and I'm really excited about this. It's supposed to be the easiest thing in the world. Thank you, Natalie. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, the more people we have, the less often you'll have to do it. But Wednesday at 6 p.m. here is where you'll get trained to do this new ministry. I invite you to do that. So this is a joy for the quality of sound improving. I also want to let you know that Dee Boswell died on March 29th. That's Tuesday. Her celebration of life is going to be this coming Friday, April 8th at 5 p.m. I understand that she loved a good joke. And Pat Solomon is recovering from carpal tunnel surgery, so we keep her in our thoughts today. And we continue to pray for the safety and well-being of the people of Ukraine, and perhaps for some of the refugees from Ukraine to find a new home among us in the Cleveland area. We welcome those who do come with joy and grace. I invite you to come forward to place a stone in the water for any other joys and concerns you have today. If you're watching virtually, I invite you to put any joys or concerns you want to share with us in the comments below. And Place 2 stones for those joys or concerns shared online with us today. And a stone of exuberant joy that I forgot to place earlier because our coming of age group is going to be doing the service in a couple of weeks, and they began rehearsing it yesterday. And I'm really excited for this small group of people who are coming of age in our community. So we get to welcome them into a new role, a new way of being with us, and it's a very exciting time. And a final stone for any joys or concerns that are not yet ready to be expressed in our community. And I have said it before, I will say it now. These are ours now, and they belong to us as a community. May the joys that we have shared be magnified, and may the burdens that we have shared be lessened. And I invite you afterwards to say a little more with one another about those things that you carry with you into this place, for all of who you are is welcome.
Well, good morning. I'm very much with Reverend Randy. It is wonderful to be begin to re-get acquainted with everyone's bottom half of their face. It's really nice to see some people I've only seen part of for the past several years. It's especially comforting this week because I've been honestly struggling this week a little bit. There's been a small personal battle going on this last week between me and my cell phone because I downloaded a food tracking app to track my food consumption. I don't know if you've used one of these before. It's a food diary, which is a good thing to do. It's wonderful. It's great. If you are experiencing it like mine, the way that it started for me was day number 1, breakfast, put it right in after I was done eating, 3/4 of a cup of oatmeal and half a banana and all of these healthy things. But now I'm in like week 3 or 4, and now my phone has to tell me I have to put my things in. And my conversations are more like, was it 2? No, it was 3 donuts. So I've been having this back and forth. It starts so reasonable, but now I'm with this rough place. I'm bad at it. But I'm doing it because I know, because very smart people who know these kinds of things and who have spent time investigating this have told me that the very act of recording what I'm eating matters because it informs my habits and it changes my perspective. The habit itself affects me, whether or not I'm very active on changing things because of the information I have. This came up and it occurred to me to share this with you all because this month we're doing something similar on the ask and the invite of the UU Ministry for Earth. There's another mouth that we feed every day that we don't often think about, that maybe could use its own food tracking app. And that mouth is our garbage cans. We don't think about this a lot, but there's a gaping maw in most of our kitchens and homes that receive a huge amount of the food that we purchase or get our hands on. Ends up right there. Why don't we spend some time thinking about what it means, all the effort and energy that it takes to bring food into our homes, to consider how much of it goes right out in the southern north. Reducing food waste is one of the actually most impactful things that individuals can do to address climate change. Not something we normally think about. To say nothing of the fact that on the other side of climate change is also, of course, a world full of global food poverty, which, of course, just as when we had arguments with our parents when we were kids, we cannot actually send the green beans to China. to the places elsewhere in the world that need this food. But our attention to how we consume can create a more just food supply for the world at large. So the invitation is for us to spend a month thinking about our place in the world and to begin to reduce some of this food waste and be much more conscientious about how we consume. And because the Ministry of Earth has been on top of this and thinking about this for a while, there's a whole set of invitations that are coming with it, and you got some of those in your order of service today. But just draw your attention to some of the things that are going to be going on. First off, there will be a Zoom presentation on Monday evening that is specifically about the ways in which food waste comes into our lives, and some information as well as suggestions about how to address that. Also, through this month, if you keep your antenna up, the e-blast every week is going to have some information specifically about these kinds of things, especially in our sort of daily lives. But the big ask, the big thing, is what we're calling the Food Waste Challenge. So this month, we're inviting everyone in the congregation, there's some links there for resources to do this, but to basically keep that food diary, not for ourselves, but for our homes, for what goes into our garbage cans, our garbage disposals, and even our compost bins week by week. Just a sense of and actually taking the time to observe, to record, and then even to assess this. I'm told there's even going to be a prize if you have kept up your food journal for several weeks. This is all going to come to a head on April 24th, when there will be a food drive for the Hunger Center. So this is going to sort of give you our chance to capstone this off and bring our food diaries to a close and take some time to think through all the things that we've learned in this process. You know, you keep a food diary, not just because you like to feel terrible about the things you consume. You do it because you care about yourself. Self-care is this important regard, important part of our life because it's the way that we regard ourselves. It's the way we love ourselves. And the funny thing about the earth is that the earth is the only grand, gigantic thing that we ever really identify with as an I. Our planet is a little bit like an extension of ourselves. So maybe a good way of thinking about this food waste challenge is here's a little chance to do some earth care in the same vein as self-care. To take a moment to regard this entire planet and its food waste and to think about the way in which we can do what we can to care for the earth.
Now it's time for a little centering in our service. This is a Ute prayer. Earth, teach me stillness as the grasses are stilled with light. Earth, teach me suffering as old stones suffer with memory. Earth, teach me humility as blossoms are humble with beginning. Earth, teach me caring as the mother who secures her young. Earth, teach me courage as the tree which stands all alone. Earth, teach me limitation as the ant which crawls on the ground. Earth, teach me as the eagle which soars in the sky. Earth, teach me resignation as the leaves which die in the fall. Earth, teach me regeneration as the seed which rises in the spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets its life. Earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain.
O Spirit of the South, make me tread your path of God. O Spirit of the West, may we always be ready for the long journey. O Spirit of the purify us with your cleansing ways.
One morning, years ago, I don't remember when, I woke up feeling really cruddy with the flu. Too awake to get more sleep, but too weak to do anything productive, I planted myself in front of the TV for some morning talk shows, which I usually don't do. I did doze off at some point and woke up to The Bold and the Beautiful, and was ready to change the channel when a scene caught my attention. From what I gathered, a couple had adopted a boy named Sunday from an impoverished area. They were in the kitchen with the woman's visiting father and cleaning out the refrigerator. The dad was showing the moms fruits and vegetables that had gone slightly bad, and she said, "Toss them." The grandfather noticed the look on Zenday's face and asked what was wrong. And the boy said that what was being thrown out would be considered good in his country, and they rarely threw anything away. It was a wake-up call to this wealthy family, and they promised to do better. Yes, a little in-your-face lecturing from a soap opera, perhaps, but a good message nevertheless, and one that got me thinking. We were already composting our veggie and fruit scraps, but I realized I could take those no longer crisp carrots, that limp celery, those wilted greens, and layer them in a Tupperware container with some water, keep in the freezer until just about full, and make vegetable stock. Those overripe, almost black-skinned bananas that I seem to have just bought make the best bread, especially with chocolate chips, right? Thankfully, with two teenagers, a lot of the food in our house does not go to waste. But every couple of weeks, if we have leftovers, dinner consists of warming them up and having a smorgasbord. We did that when I was growing up, but was surprised to learn of friends whose families actually threw out leftovers and thought it weird that we did not have a freshly prepared meal every night and thought leftovers were gross. For a time, and especially when my dad got laid off from his factory job and money was tight, I thought there was something wrong with us for eating leftovers, and why could we not be more like my more well-off friends? I now recognize that we were being less wasteful and more respectful of where our food came from and who produced it than we realized at the time. Or maybe my parents did, I just didn't. As my maternal grandfather, who often referenced the Great Depression, always said, "Waste not, want not." Sometimes I thought he was being overly curmudgeonly, but he had a point. And it's interesting now that reusing, recycling, upcycling, making do with what we have, and trying to waste less has become more popular and even hip these days, when that was his way of life back then until the day he died. I'm sure I would have come to these realizations about food waste another way at another time, but it was something in popular culture that got me to think more critically about one aspect of how I live on and interact with this planet. Enlightenment can come from unexpected sources, even a soap opera. and that a character named Zende provided a brief but important lesson.
Thanks, Natalie. So, I'm going to wander sharing that and warn you ahead of time. I don't know how many of you have heard of the book, The 5 Love Languages. It's been out for a while. I see some nods and some raised hands. Well, how do you show someone that you love? What's a way?
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. That's actually literally one of the 5 love languages. Words of affirmation. You tell them something that you appreciate about them. You affirm them for who they are, for what they've done. Say nice things. So what's another thing? How do you show someone you love them? Physical contact. You have meaningful touch with their permission can show somebody they can care about them. Some of us have really been missing meaningful touch during COVID. We haven't had that opportunity to give hugs, and so now 3 people have said, "Can I give you a hug this morning?" It's like, yes, all the hugs. Come on, bring it on. It's a way that we connect with other people. So what's another? That's 2, literally from the book. People have read this thing. Yes. You cook them pancakes on Sunday. So we might call that an act of service. You do something nice for somebody, and you cook them pancakes, or you can cook other times of the day. You can do that too. What do you think? Listening. Maybe, I don't know that that's actually one of the love languages that Gary's having. It should be. Maybe that's quality time. Spending quality time with you. That's what Gary Chapman would have said. Spending quality time is one of the love languages, and I think listening is high quality time. Most of us do not have enough space in our lives where somebody just sits and listens to us and gives us that space. Is there another way that Gary Chapman didn't have to have all the answers, yeah?
Giving gifts.
Giving gifts, yeah, giving and receiving gifts. You buy somebody something nice, and you give it to them, it doesn't have to be their birthday, it just says, I care about you, I'm thinking of you. It's one of people's love languages, yeah. Support the things that are important to them. Now we're thinking outside the box. Now we're going off script. That's not one of Gary Chapman's lists. But when you might give of yourself to something that somebody else really cares about, that can be a way that we express love. Yeah. Any other really creative ones? Say it one more time. Empathy. We show empathy for somebody that we understand what they're feeling. I heard somebody else say it.
Take them seriously.
Take them seriously. Now we're getting challenging. Take them seriously. Somebody that said giving people space is a way of expressing love. Sometimes we need space. That's why we want to go on that drive by ourselves at 2:00 in the afternoon during COVID, when it's like, you know what? I was not thinking that I would be sharing my living space with this other person 24/7 for 2 years. Maybe I should just have a little space. That's our love language. Okay, so if you think about the Earth, like our planet, how do you think the Earth shows us that she loves us? Flowers? She brings us flowers, yeah. Food, she gives us food. Not maybe cooking pancakes, but she gives us the things to cook the pancakes with. Oxygen, we can breathe, yeah. What else? And chocolate. Earth gives us chocolate, brings us flowers and chocolate.
Gravity.
Gravity. Meaningful physical touch. Here's hugs us close with gravity. Rain and snow, yeah. Okay, so lots of ways. Probably if you get a little creative and imaginative, you can come up with lots of things that the Earth does to show us that she loves us. She feeds us, she takes care of us, yes? She gives us resources to do pretty much anything we're going to do. We need the Earth for that, right? And yes?
And she has tough love. She tries to show us when we're wrong.
She tries to show us when we're wrong. Yeah, she gives us feedback and says, this is not working as well as you think it's supposed to. And we're paying attention. So then how do we show Earth that we love Earth? What are some things we do to show Earth that we love Earth? Beach cleanups, yeah. Compost, okay. We're going to talk about how that shows Earth that we love her in a second. So if that answer doesn't make sense to you, just hang on.
Protective laws.
Say it one more time.
Protective laws.
Protective laws? Yeah, so we might say, okay, here's what's going to work best. So we're going to set some guidelines for how we treat our resources. Any other ways we show the earth that we love her?
Eventually buy an electric car.
Eventually buy an electric car. Plant trees, yeah.
We remember she bats last.
She bats last.
You remember that.
We remember that she bats last. So, you know what that means? That means that she's going to be here longer than we are. So if we don't take care of her, we're going to be the ones that suffer most. She's going to stick around longer than we will. Well, I want to introduce you to somebody. Did we get you a microphone? Okay, great. This is Chelsea Shuren. She's from Hunger Network, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And we're going to talk specifically about the food waste competition. We got you. Okay, good.
Okay.
What's your love language, Chelsea?
Well, my love language in my personal life is love and action. It kind of feeds into the work that I do every day, which is focused on reducing food waste. So, you know, to kind of deep dive into that and sort of talk a little bit about my spirituality, I consider, you know, nature to be God and God is nature. So everything I do, not only in my personal life, but in my professional life, revolves around taking care of the earth and taking care of nature and revering it all that she has to offer.
Well, I was going to ask you how that's a spiritual, how that's a love language for the earth, but you already answered that. So let me ask you specifically about food waste. How is reducing food waste one of Earth's love languages? How does that actually help?
Yeah. Well, so when we think about the earth, when we think about all that, you know, the earth provides for us, there are things that we can do in turn to take care of her. I heard earlier that we were talking a little bit about the climate crisis. And when we think about food waste, 40% of the food that is produced in the United States goes to waste every single year. So that's food that doesn't even make it to your grocery store, that doesn't even make it to your plate, doesn't even make it to your local restaurant. It ends up getting wasted for a variety of different reasons. So one of the things that we can do to care for our planet is try and reduce our food waste, both at home and in our community. And, you know, food waste is producer of greenhouse gas emissions, so carbon dioxide, methane. When organic material gets into the landfill, it turns into methane, which is a contributing greenhouse gas. So by focusing some more attention on food waste and how we can reduce it, we can help, you know, care for Earth in a number of ways and kind of contribute to this larger issue of the climate crisis.
I am glad you're here, Chelsea, because I don't know anything about this stuff. And so I think about like what one person can possibly do, because it's frustrating for me sometimes. I feel like if I recycle a little bit, it's not really doing anything for the planet. I feel like it's just a drop in the bucket and it's not very significant. But what can one person do, or one family, one household do to actually reduce food waste in a meaningful way?
Absolutely. So when we think about food waste, there's a couple different ways in which we can think about it. We're thinking about edible food waste versus inedible food waste, right? So edible food waste is food that perhaps was from a grocery store, from a restaurant, from a production plant, from a farm, that is still usable, but could potentially end up being thrown away. So we can think about food waste in that way, right? There's product that's still edible, but for whatever reason might still be thrown out. And then we have food waste that's inedible food, right? So an orange peel from your household, or, you know, spoiled milk in the fridge, or something that you ate and you only ate half the sandwich and maybe there's a little bit of crust left over. And so when we think about food waste, you know, in our own lives, there's a number of different approaches that we can have. And I think one of the most effective ways to reduce food waste at home is to really take an audit and kind of assess how we deal with food in our household. The first thing that I always recommend to people, although it technically could be the last thing on the list, right, is saving your food scraps. So if you have part of an apple that you didn't eat and you don't want to save it for 2 hours from now, you can compost it. So you can, you know, save all of your food scraps, your leftover food, that whether it's from vegetable preparation or bones from meat, and you can compost those. So you can turn those food scrap materials into organic material to be used for soil, to later plant fruits and vegetables or flowers or anything in the garden. Or you can also participate with Rust Belt Riders, which is a local composting facility. They do community drop-offs, or you can actually do residential home pickups. You can participate in their services. But to me, that's kind of the last step, right? When we're doing our own home audit or assessment, the first thing really that I think we should think about is actually assessing the food that we have in our household, in our refrigerators, in our pantries. What do we have? What are we using? What are we not using? What could we use or should we be using? So before you can go to the grocery store, shop at your house first. Shop in your refrigerator, shop in your pantry. You know, use what's there before we take the next step of just throwing something away because it's been sitting there for 3 weeks, right? Which I know we've all done it. I certainly have. But shop at home first, right? And then the second thing I would recommend is meal planning or meal preparation. It's hard sometimes to kind of have the foresight or the thought to sit there and write down every single meal you're going to have every single day because everyone's palates change day by day. But meal prep is a really helpful tool so that when you do go to the grocery store, if there are items that you need, you can actually know exactly what's on your list and just buy just what you need for that week to make it through. And then the last thing that I recommend is, and I totally lost my train of thought, but
That's okay, because I was just gonna mention about the composting. There was an article this morning in the newspaper about composting, and honestly, as someone who has just been kind of settling into a new home over the last few months, it was the most intimidating thing in the world to do that and say, this is what you want me to start doing. And I was so grateful that we've got these pickup bins in our parking lot for Rust Belt Riders, because I will probably be doing that before I start composting at my house, just getting into the habit of setting those things aside for composting, even if I'm not doing it at my home, is going to be easier because we make it available here. And one of the things, I don't want to give anything away from the coming of age group and their service. It's going to be amazing. But one of the things that we were talking about is mindfulness. And when you were speaking about looking through our cabinets and our fridges and all of that stuff, I just thought, what a mindful approach to how we are eating. It's a spiritual practice to go through and say, what is it that I have available to me that I can use in a new way, and how can I be mindful about the way that I'm going to the grocery store instead of just how am I appeasing my appetite in the moment. And if we start getting mindful about that, maybe we can be mindful about other things, like the things that we digest from our internet time. You know, it's just, it can go so many places once we start being mindful about one thing in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the last piece I was just going to mention is, and this totally ties into the mindfulness component, is learning the proper ways to store and care for your food, right? It's easy to go to the grocery store, spend hundreds of dollars, buy all this food, bring it home, and just kind of toss it in the fridge, not knowing that some items you might be putting in certain places might expire within a day because you're just not storing them the right way. You know, so being more mindful in our thought and practice of how not only we're assessing the food that we're eating, but then how we're purchasing it, and then how we're caring for it afterwards, I think are really good steps to just reducing our food waste overall, right? Kind of addressing the upstream factors rather than dealing with the downstream issues. You're starting to shift your mindset and how you're even interacting with food in the community and within your own home.
Well, and that makes me think about gratitude as a practice, because if I treat the food as something that's precious that I'm grateful for, I might want to care for it differently than if I take it for granted and just assume that I can go buy more. If this sits out and spoils, then I can just go get more. But if I treat it like it's something that I'm grateful for, and I use that as a spiritual practice of gratitude, I might be more conscious of how I care for it.
Absolutely, and I think that kind of ties into the whole conversation about love languages. It's just being more intentional with how we interact with these resources that come from the earth, right? How are we purchasing them? How are we interacting with them? Just spending time outside, but particularly when it comes to food waste, just having this practice and this attitude of gratitude. You know, I think many of us have heard over the years, but having an attitude of gratitude and just being a little bit more mindful and a little bit more conscientious about, you know, how we're taking care of the food in our lives, because there are so many people in the world and in our community here in Cleveland that don't have access to food, period, or to even nutritious foods like fruits and vegetables that a lot of us, you know, that all of us need to survive and stay healthy.
Yeah. So, okay, we've talked about taking that assessment, and we've got that food waste challenge that you can do throughout this month, you can assess what food you are throwing out, not so that you feel guilty or ashamed of it, just so that you're taking stock. And you say, okay, here's where things are for me personally. Here's where things are for my household. If somebody really wants to take it up a notch and they want to go the next step and do things for the larger community, I understand is it a food rescue program?
Yes.
Tell us what that is if somebody wants to just take things a step further.
Yeah, absolutely. So my role actually at the Hunger Network, we are an emergency food relief and food distribution and food recovery organization. And I'm the program director, so I oversee our food rescue program, which is exactly what Reverend Randy was talking about. So we take surplus, usable, and edible, but not sellable product from the community, right? It could be restaurants, it could be grocery stores, it could be farms, it could be produce distributors, and we redirect that food that would otherwise be thrown away, right? Not even just composted, just thrown away. And we take that food and we send it back out into the community to organizations working with food insecure populations. So it could be a Head Start program, it could be a transitional home, a sobriety home, a senior center, a child and family service center, or a hunger center or food pantry. And we send all of those donations back out into the community so that it is serving, our neighbors in need. And we facilitate all of that using an app called Food Rescue Bureau. The app is really awesome. It functions similar to Uber or Lyft, right? So anyone who's interested in volunteering, they can download the app. It's Hunger Network Food Rescue in your app store. You register in the system, and then when we need food to be rescued, you'll get a notification. And it'll tell you where the pickup is, where the drop-off is, what day, what time of the week it needs to be done. And it's as simple as that. So you can be one of the people out in the community actually helping to recover food and send it back out to, our neighbors that are facing hunger. And it's really simple. I would say I have to always think through my metrics, but our program started in November of 2018. And since then, we've recovered 3,090,000 pounds of food from the community.
It's amazing. So one of our principles, we were talking a little bit about Unitarian Universalism and what that is as a faith tradition. And, we have a lot of different ways of seeing the divine here, but one of our shared principles is that we recognize we are part of an interdependent web of existence, and we want to honor that and respect that. And so there are a few ways that we've mentioned today that you can do that. We've got a food drive coming up at the end of the month. April 24th is that Sunday. And so we're going to have a food drive here that's going to help get food to better places where it can be used in the community through Hunger Network. You can assess where you are with food waste, and you can maybe make some commitments to how you want to do things differently. Set it, at an easy bar to start and grow from there, but assessing where you are might be the first step of that food waste challenge. And if you really want to kick it up a notch, then there's this Hunger Rescue Program, the Food Rescue Program, that you can take part in and make a difference in the larger community. And not only can you contribute to that with your time and energy, but I think we're also going to collect some financial resources for them today. So I'll turn things back over to Natalie, and I just want to thank you again, Chelsea, for being with us today and having this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Obviously, I don't have to say too much more about the Hunger Network. That was a great talk. So now we'll take the collection. So you're welcome to present your offering in the collection plate that will be coming down to the pews. Or if you so choose, you can do it through our Cash App handle, which is in the order of service for those of you who are watching online. It is $UUCC44122 on the Cash App handle. So please give generously within your means.
We accept these gifts with the acceptance of gifts on the yellow card in your pew now. We offer these gifts with gratitude, and we acknowledge the constant gifts of time, talent, and treasure that strengthen and nourish this congregation as a reflection of our commitment to unity within and without, our purposeful spirituality that is ever searching and growing, and our intentional actions that lead to greater justice in our congregation, our city, our nation, and our world. I invite you to rise and embody your spirit as we sing together, Earth Was Given as a Garden. It is number 207 in the gray hymn. I think we've already agreed that we're going to be respectful of one another as the COVID landscape continues to change and evolve. We're going to have coffee hour where you'll get to interact with each other. If somebody says, can you put on a mask while we have a chat this morning? I hope you will do so respectfully and without grumbling. We've got so many things coming up this week. We've got not only the training for our new sound system happening on Wednesday night, we've got the breaking the silence on the City Hall steps tomorrow at 5, Cleveland City Hall steps tomorrow at 5 p.m. And then the Food Too Good to Waste webinar at 7 p.m. tomorrow. All this stuff is in your weekly emailer. I know you all read your newsletter. We've also got things coming up a little further down the road. If you would like to be a delegate for General Assembly this year, we have space for more delegates. If funding is an issue, we have resources to help out. So if you would like to be a delegate this year for General Assembly, please let us know. You can let me know. I don't know who else to let me know, and I'll connect you to the right people. We also have the Journey 101 starting next Sunday evening, which is kind of a 5-week overview of spiritual development, and that's going to be a really great new class happening in the evening from 7 to 8:30 on Sundays. In person, that's not online, that's in person. And what else? Oh, the auction. If you all want to have an auction this year, we need to have an auction team. And the auction team has kind of been non-functional for the past couple of years because there's been something going on the last couple of years that has kept us from doing auction kinds of things. Sharon will help you, but she's not going to do it all. So if you want to be on the auction team, if you're really enthusiastic about having an auction this year, let Sharon know, and she will help you make it happen. So with all of that, read your newsletter. Man, there is so much stuff in there. May we be mindful of how, in trusting one another, we may use our power, our collective power and our individual power for the good of all, and touch the earth with reverence. And maybe then we become a little closer to a heaven here on earth. Amen. And blessed be.
Please join me in words to extinguish our chalice on your yellow card. We extinguish this flame, but now the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Wanna make this garden all it takes is a break and a little like we so each time grow by row, someone bless these seeds I sow, someone warm and from below, till the rain comes tumbling down. Rains are picking souls. We are made of grace and bones. Need a place to call our own as the time is passing. Pray for rain, sun and wind. Find the way in grace to stray. To my body and my brain, to the music of God. Each life, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. All it takes is a rain and a blow, and a piece of fertile ground. Each life, row by row, someone knows these seeds I sow. Someone wandering from below, till the rain comes tumbling down. Let your rows straight and long, temper them with prayer and song. Mother Earth will make you strong if you give her love and care. Oh, love me, promise ways in your way. In my body, inside, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. All it takes is a break and the moment of peace of the ground. It's flying, roll. Someone knows these seeds are sown. Someone born them from below. Till the rain comes tumbling down. Till the rain comes tumbling